Chapter 4. A Trip to the University. "Stay close behind me and do as I do," Harry informed them the next day at the railway station. He led them onto platform 7 and then to an archway between platforms 6 and 7. They had spent the evening and stayed overnight with Harry, his wife Ginny and their 3 children. They had a house in London, though generally they lived in the country, close to Ginny's parents. They had discussed the contents of the diary over dinner, and Ginny had suggested that they seek some expert help in deciphering the later runic entries. She had suggested an old friend of theirs named Hermione. Harry had agreed that this was a good idea, and had left immediately to talk to someone. He returned shortly after to tell them that, despite the next day being a Sunday, Hermione would be working at the university. Ginny and Harry seemed to find this amusing. Harry had then, by some magical means not obvious to their Muggle guests, arranged for them to travel by train to the university the following day. That morning they had taken a taxi to King's Cross Station. "This is going to be weird for you," Harry warned them. "Follow straight behind me and you'll be fine." With that, he walked directly at the wall of the archway and disappeared. "No way," Lydia breathed. "Well, here goes." Ambrose followed suit and promptly disappeared in the same way. Lydia followed. She found herself on a misty platform where a hissing train like some huge beast stood beside her. A sign overhead read, "Platform 6 7/8." The train hissed more loudly, and a new cloud of mist swept by in front of it. "It's a steam train," she squeaked in realization. "It's a steam train which is about to leave," Harry added. "Come on." He helped her up the step into the carriage, where she found her uncle was already aboard. The train was old but well kept. It had a lot of highly polished wood, thick maroon carpets and immaculately painted cream walls. It had a corridor running along one side with small compartments of it. Each compartment seated up to 6 people, on upholstered bench seats facing each other across a wooden table. A couple of compartments were occupied by families with young children, but they soon found an empty one, and all bundled into it. They heard the guard's whistle sound outside, and with a deep hiss from the engine and a clunk from the carriage, they began to move. Ambrose and Lydia sat facing the way they were going. Harry sat opposite them. "Where is your university, Harry?" Ambrose asked. "Cambridge." "Nottingham," he replied, as if they should have known. Lydia leaned forward with the question, which had been on her mind for some time. "Wouldn't it be a good thing if Muggles became wizards and witches? There'd be more of you and you wouldn't have to hide away." "I don't think it's that simple, Lydia," Harry replied thoughtfully. "Magic can be enormously powerful. Young witches and wizards are brought up to understand their power and use it responsibly. Even so, my department spends all its time trying to protect innocent people, both magical and Muggle, from the minority of magic users who misbehave. You won't know this, but 10 or 12 years ago, one rogue wizard threatened to take over our world and destroy yours. We narrowly managed to stop him, and many good people died. If millions of Muggles are suddenly given magical powers, with no one to teach them how to control them, what do you think would happen?" Ambrose gave his beard a tug. "To be honest, look at the mess we Muggles are making of the world without magical powers." "That's the problem, Ambrose," Harry replied. "There are lots of people in the wizarding world who are already deeply concerned about how the Muggle world is affecting the whole planet. I'm worried how they will react if they hear there is a chance that Muggles will have the same powers as they have." All 3 of them were silent for some time. Eventually, Ambrose broke the silence. "Who is this Hermione we're going to see at Nottingham University?" "Nottingham Trent Wizarding University," Harry corrected with a smile. "She's someone I've been friends with since I was Lydia's age, almost. She's an advocate, a lawyer, in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. She's also a researcher at the university, and the brightest witch of her generation. Her full name is Hermione Granger Weasley. She's Ron's wife. I think you'll like her. Without her and Ron, we would never have beaten Voldemort, the rogue wizard I was telling you about earlier. And for the remainder of the journey, Harry gave them a reduced account of the Second Wizarding War, playing down his own part in it as much as he could. It was about a mile from Nottingham Rail Station to the Arkwright building on Shakespeare Street, but, in deference to Lydia's little legs and because time was ticking on, they took a taxicab. The cab dropped them outside the gates of the building. "It looks exactly like you would think a visiting university would look," Lydia said. "Not much of a disguise." The Arkwright building was a beautiful stone building, ornamented with arches, pillars, towers, and everything one could want in a Gothic revival beauty. The entrance from the street took them through ornate wrought iron gates and up to a line of 3 arched wooden doors. "How do we get in?" Ambrose asked. "We do not have to post ourselves through a letterbox or anything unseemly, I trust." "Uncle," Lydia remonstrated. Harry laughed. "The way in's very civilised. We walk in through the door. I do have to set it up so that I can take guests with me." "Muggles, you mean?" Ambrose surmised. "Yeah," Harry murmured, sounding abashed. He stepped up to the right-hand door. He reached inside his jacket, took out his wand, and held it discreetly out of sight by his leg. The tip of the wand twitched and swirled a few times. Harry turned back to the others and smiled. "Mind the steps as we go in. Follow me." Harry opened the door and walked through, the others side by side directly behind him. The wide entrance hall beyond looked indistinct and hazy. 2 misty female students were walking towards them, showing no sign of seeing Harry. They were walking straight at him. The expected collision never happened. They passed right through Harry like ghosts, and then through Ambrose and Lydia. Harry turned and grinned, then pointed down at the floor. Looking clearer and more solid than anything else in the building was a staircase leading downwards. Ambrose put his hand tentatively out to the marble handrail. It was as solid as it appeared. The 3 walked down the steps, passing through a ghostly version of the floor of the hall. The stairs led downwards at least 20 metres before they came to an arched doorway, filled with an iron-braced wooden door. As they approached, Harry tapped it with the tip of his wand. It swung open with a breath of different air, but with barely a sound. Lydia had been convinced it would creak ominously. The broad corridor inside was comfortably clad in dark oak and green leather panels, with a thick blue and gold-coloured carpet. At intervals along the corridor, between the doors leading off either side, were buttoned leather Chesterfield chairs of various sizes and colours. Above each chair was a brass lamp, shaped like a dragon with a glowing crystal flame casting a warm light. Standing in the corridor was a woman in what appeared to be academic robes. She beamed happily at them. "Harry!" she exclaimed. "And these must be the people you mentioned." "Hi, Hermione," Harry replied. "This is Ambrose and Lydia. You got my owl, then?" "Of course." She smiled at each of them in turn. "What was it you wanted me to look at?" "Ambrose has a journal, someone else's journal, which I need your opinion on. I'd like you to read it all at some point, though not right away. Last night we marked some passages we think are important. Oh, and towards the end it goes into some kind of ancient runes which I couldn't read. If you could decipher them, that would be a great help." "I'll see what I can do, Head Aura," she teased. She led them into a spacious library, lined with shelves so high that long movable ladders which ran on rails were supplied to reach the higher levels. All 4 of them sat at one of the various reading tables. Between them, they brought Hermione up to date with the journal, how they had come to have it, and the story it seemed to contain as far as they were able to read. While they talked, Hermione flicked through the passages Harry had magically marked the evening before, with Ambrose, while Lydia had slept. The marked sections glowed gently in different colours. After a while, the storytelling died out, and Hermione spent much of the time reading, breaking off occasionally to ask questions, which Ambrose mostly answered. Lydia was mesmerised with attention, staring first at Harry, then Hermione, and back again. She was taken with their magical hosts. She looked at Harry's bright green smiling eyes. Somehow it seemed to Lydia that there was more than experience in them. Perhaps a lot of pain as well. His hair was dark and unruly, giving him a youthful look. Lydia thought it odd that a wizard would wear glasses, though they were nice enough in their own way, with lightweight frames in a gunmetal dark material. Surely a wizard could fix any sight problems they might have. She decided it must be a style thing. Hermione was no great beauty, but quite an attractive woman. Her lustrous brown hair, a cascade of shining curls and ringlets. She had a pale, clear skin, with little or perhaps very subtle makeup. Her robes were plain and slightly worn at the edges. From the way she scanned the journal and attended to the answers to whatever questions she asked, it was clear to Lydia she was unusually intelligent. She was a bright, unfussy and natural woman, or rather, witch. She made Lydia think of her mother and of home. She shook herself out of a wave of homesickness and looked around the library at the books. Most of the books on the library shelves were large, old, and bound in a variety of hides. Some had teeth. Some had spines. Of course, all books have spines, the edges along which they fold. But some of these had actual spines on their spines, in the way that porcupines have spines. Lydia raised her eyebrows, smiled, sighed, and returned to the conversation. Hermione mused. This is extremely interesting. If it's real, of course. Is that possible? Harry sounded concerned. Could he... Harry, I don't know, she replied with a hint of annoyance. This is old magic that he's talking about. Not many people have much of an understanding of the old magic these days. I think the Chinese and some of the African wizards may have a better understanding. If I was to ask around... I don't want this spreading far and wide, Hermione, Harry warned. What's the problem? Surely if more wizards took a look... Hermione, if this gets out, there will be panic, believe me. Is there nobody here we can talk to who knows something about old magic? Well, not here as such, but there's someone at Hogwarts, of course, who could be incredibly helpful. Draco. You think so? Harry sounded surprised, but quite pleased. Absolutely. I've been in touch with him a lot over research subjects. He has been going further and further back in history. Lots of the dark arts draw on earlier sources. The old magic is neither dark nor good, but it is powerful. That's the attraction for dark wizards. I think if anyone in Britain can help us, it's probably Draco. Well, Harry smiled, we should go to see Draco. Will you meet us on the train tomorrow?